Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I want to tell you something about the lately so-called Dutch pour. So excuse me if the intro is a little longer, but I in general want to say a few things about that. This is called a Dutch pour because in some of the fluid art Facebook groups it was a Dutch lady which said, okay, so here's my take on it, and that's how the name developed. At the end, it's basically a pour where you cover the paint with a white layer and then blow it out again with a hairdryer. So the method is using a hairdryer for blowing it out like a blow painting. This lady really does fantastic paintings, so that's why it also became a little bit popular lately and more in the public viewing of it. But in general, for everything you see, you can never say if somebody published it on a different platform or a year ago or even 3 weeks ago where you didn't see it in a forum yet or because you're not in any forum. So I personally have a problem with these discussions around, yeah, but that's copyright or you need to credit that and that person. I think it's not a discussion that you can have for this type of things on the internet. Even if I personally saw it at one person, I will say I was inspired by, but there's some ugly reactions saying you need to, and that's just not the case. Perhaps 10 years ago that was already done, you just never know. So that's just my take on it, what I wanted to say. And you can also simply never duplicate somebody's painting. It's always individual, beautiful art from the artist, from the creator, and there is just no copying. So let's come to the method itself. I cannot promise you that's gonna be super pretty because my hairdryer broke. So I have to use a childish like of one. It doesn't have a lot of power. It also doesn't need a lot of power, but I cannot regulate the power and it's very hot. And I don't have a nozzle. So you should have a nozzle, but I just built one and we will see how it works. The important thing about this type of painting is where I sometimes see it going wrong is that you keep your hairdryer very horizontal and that you don't go very steep or that you move it around. That's why sometimes the pattern looks, when people say my pattern looks different. So that's really a question of trying it again and again with the right angle of the blow dryer. And another thing I hear always like, yeah, but the difference now is that she only, or that uses water. Again, her paintings are beautiful. And that's just not the case. You can do every single pouring method with paint and water only. The pouring medium is simply to connect, to keep up the pigment connection. You can find really knowledge videos on my basic playlist. That's very, very important for me to educate for that purpose. So whatever you do, you don't need pouring medium if you're not concerned about how it's going to look long term or if it's going to break or anything like that. Pouring medium is to stabilize the pigment connection, and it's also like a myth that you need a 60-40 or 50-50 ratio. No, it's also for older or more established pouring artists. You see them using a tablespoon. I personally use 30%, so that's not the key factor. The key factor is always consistency. And that is true for this painting. It doesn't need to be water, but it needs to be a little bit thinner because you want to slide the different paint, the different colors over each other. So that's indeed beneficial if it's a bit thinner. The method itself, you have a little base already on it. I have a wooden thing, that's why it shines through. Then you place like little puddle pours in off center, because what you're gonna do is pour white around it, and then with the air of the hairdryer carefully blow it, the white paint like a blanket over the colors. So that's also why I say you shouldn't do this, but really a slight motion. And then you have mostly just white and a little bit of paint here. And then you blow it back out where you blow the color over the white again. So it's a bit like swiping actually. And that can turn out very nice or not so nice, depending really on how much you wiggle around with your hair dryer. Also, this is eventually again one of these things where more is less, so it depends on how much paint you use and yeah, what pattern you like. Some people like more, some less, so it's again, I'm sometimes very critical on my own things, but yeah, it's something to explore. So I think, yeah, another thing, normally I don't use silicone in that because you get lacing that looks like cells also, and I think it's just nicer. But you can do whatever you like. So let's give it a go. Okay, so I have my hair dryer ready and my paint. Again, I want to say this, I'm not sure this is going to be a nice painting because I cannot regulate the hair dryer. So I'm just going to use some simple colors like magenta, blue and yellow. You can play around with that first, and then later on it looks really nice if you use some metallics or something like that. Okay, so we put it there a little off-centered, so this is gonna go over here, the paint's gonna then be here, and you're gonna blow it back. Even so, that's also why you would eventually put here a little bit more. You can cover this complete section up already, because I would probably need to do that later on, because yeah, mine is still shine through from the wood. But I think this is gonna be more experimental or demonstration for me, because yeah, hair dryer, all these kind of things. But you can see how I poured it around, a little bit liquidy. I'm gonna quickly eventually torch it a little bit for the air bubbles and then blow it over the color. Okay, so I said already you would blow from here, that the paint goes, the white goes over here. You can actually also pick paint up and give it a blanket with a palette knife. That's what, yeah, I've done a year ago or something. You can tilt it a bit. Also here, really do what you like. If you're not super happy with how it got blown, if you can say that, tilt it a bit. Perhaps something nice comes out of it. So don't just give it up. Let's see how this hair dryer works. Okay, so it did not have really a lot of power, but you can see the idea. Don't blow it out completely. Normally, do you then have only a little corner of paint left and all the rest is under it. I'm gonna try a little more, but already now the hairdryer smells. So. Okay, so I know now that under here is the paint, so I think for me it's easier for the camera also to turn it around. And now you blow it back over the surface of your painting, and you can do it from here to all over the end. You can spread it out like leaves or flowers. I often just remember to not do a lot of wibbling. Again, if you like it, you do it, but I think the effect is more coming from kind of swipe by air blowing. So I think that's pretty cool. Another tip, so you need a good layer of white to blow it, because otherwise you don't get these pastel-like patterns. Here I was too close with my hairdryer, so it's kind of a bit down to the bottom. But for the rest it turned out very nice. Does not have a ton of lacing. I'm gonna torch it now, but I think that's also because I had really thick layers. I'm also only gonna torch it a little bit because I think some things don't need real cells. For this one, for example, just a little bit for the air bubbles. Okay, so I hope you like this, like the painting, like the advice, like the conversation. Please subscribe, leave a comment, I will answer it, and I hope to see you back soon.